The outbreak of the Civil War in Britain, 1638-1642. In 1629, young King Charles I decided to rule without Parliament, which in his first 4 years had caused him a lot of problems. He just couldn't get on with them. So you get the 11 years of Charles's personal rule, which gradually broke down. One after another, the three kingdoms, Scotland, England, Ireland, go into revolt. Why? The Whigs, the Whig theory of school of history in the 19th century, used to call these 11 years personal rule the 11 years tyranny, which one might say is a loaded way of describing it. In fact, was it so tyrannical? Largely no. You could argue that Charles I in the 1630s was far and away less bloodthirsty and tyrannical than Henry VIII in the 1530s. It was also the case, however, that a more sophisticated and literate ruling elite were less ready to put up with not being consulted, having no parliament to speak through, than their great-grandfathers had been in the time of Henry VIII. So it's not so much the quality or terrible quality of Charles's rule, but the way it was perceived, the change in values of the time. After all, kings had ruled without Parliament for long periods before. In the reign of Charles's father, James I, between 1610 and 1621, there's only one Parliament, the Adult Parliament of 1614, and as its name implies, or its nickname implies, that was rather abortive, and spent 3 weeks doing not very much before the exasperated king dissolved it. And ruling without Parliament was not unconstitutional. There was nothing in the English constitution that said the king had to call Parliament. Call if he wanted to. Also, it's ruling without Parliament is purely negative. It's not necessarily a positive programme. But some historians have seen a rather feeble and halting progress to absolutism, continental-style absolutism in the 1630s. But feeble and halting, because Charles should have built up a standing army if he wanted to be a real absolutist monarch, and a civil service, professional civil service. Perhaps he would have done if he'd had time, but things collapsed before he could get round to it. We don't know. What he did try and build up with the famous ship money, the tax taken without parliamentary authorisation, was a navy, which of course is not much use to have a land-based royal absolutism. So then, the factors which led to this great revolt from 1538 are many and various. Scotland was the first to go, and here religion is very much the factor. Charles and Laud, with supreme statesmanship and tact, decide to introduce the Anglican Church into Scotland, decide to make the official Scottish Calvinist Kirk Anglican, if you like, and high Anglican at that. It's a national revulsion ensues, which is the stuff of Scottish folklore, which I won't go into now. Jenny Geddes, the Cale Weef, hurling a stool at the in St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh at the head of the officiating pro-Anglican dean. Anyway, the Scottish nobles and gentry sign the Covenant, which says that they will not part before Charles caves in and recognises their own Calvinist kirk, and they invade England. That in itself forces Charles eventually to call Parliament, the Short Parliament, 1640, to get money to fight the Scots, but Pym and Say and Seal, who dominate the Short Parliament, are in league with the Scots and say they will not vote Charles any money before he dismembers his personal rule regime. The English are annoyed about religion, the Laudian innovations. They're annoyed about arbitrary taxation like ship money, and above all, they want a parliament, they want representative institutions, so they, the English nobility and gentry, can share power with the king. What about the Irish Revolt of 1641? If you want the cause of the Irish Revolt, to do them properly, I'll be here for a very long time, so I'll cut them. Just about every issue conceivable in Ireland. Ireland is the only one of the three kingdoms which is under colonial rule. A foreign English and to some degree Scottish elite is imposing an alien culture, an alien language and an alien religion on the native Irish. Remember, at this time, The Irish are overwhelmingly Gaelic-speaking. They have their own language, and they're overwhelmingly Roman Catholic. Also, the ratio of population of Ireland to England is much higher than today. Ireland has about 60% of the population of England. These days, I would say it's got more like 8% of the population. So a load of revolting Irish on your doorstep is very alarming, particularly as they're Catholic, and there's a mutual racist hatred between the English and the Irish, which, let us hope, is not true today. The fulcrum, however, of the whole Civil War explosion is usually England. The revolts in the two Celtic countries gave the English their chance. The king had to recall Parliament to get tax to pay for the Scottish revolt, and by the way, he didn't get this tax. Then in 1641, the Irish revolt of alien papists, from the English point of view, weakened him still further, and also alarmed Parliament. Though a mixture of the fear of the Irish revolt and the king's wish to exploit the situation destroyed the constitutional compromise which Parliament had forced on the king in 1641. If that had held, there might not have been a civil war. The result is well known: the civil war and eventual execution of the king in 1649. The monarchy was restored in 1660 in the shape of Charles II, son of Charles I, but was never the same again. Absolutism could never be seriously on the cards again. The brief threatening of it in the 1680s was more apparent than real, as the revolution of 1688 showed. What general explanations, then, can we give for the Civil War? I'd say you have to avoid general explanations in one way, and go into a lot of detail, which we can't do here, but some which have been advanced. Religion and constitutional issues, those are the 19th century Whig school of history. There's a lot in that. 3, the Marxist idea, a bourgeois revolution against what they awkwardly name the pseudo-absolutist monarchy. I think that's more outdated. That's an idea of the 1930s to 50s. Personally, I think it's a more outdated organising principle than the 19th century Whig theory. And how the very awkwardness of that Charles's monarchy was pseudo-absolutist shows that the theory is a bit cumbersome. 3, one which is more recent, is that the Civil War was a split in the elite, a split in the nobility and gentry. After all, the parliamentary side contains some real raving left-wing radicals like the Earl of Essex, the Earl of Manchester, the Earl of Pembroke, the Earl of Bedford, and even the Earl of Salisbury, the son of the minister of Elizabeth and James. It's very hard to make out that the parliamentarians were the underdogs while the royalists were the possessors. It's a split in the elite who really want to restore what they imagine was the constitutional balance of the time of Elizabeth. In fact, what they want to restore is not the constitutional balance of the time of Elizabeth, but they think it is. But once the elite is split, of course, as the years go on, 1640s go on, far more radical forces emerge. Cromwell and his Ironsides are one example. But then by 1647 you get the Levellers and the Diggers, who are too radical for Cromwell, and the various lunatic, half-political, half-religious sects of the late 1640s. So, as Shakespeare said, take but degree away, untune that string, and lo, what discord follows. Or to put it more crudely, if you open the box, you don't know what's going to fly out.